Good morning, Maimonides. It's a shame we can't be together today, but Torah doesn't stop for any virus. So we got Pesach coming up in just a couple of weeks, and there's a lot to learn about the Pesach Seder, the story of the Jews leaving Egypt, and a lot of takeaways for us. So something I want to highlight today and ask you a few questions on at the end is the state of the Jewish people while being in slavery. We can relate a lot in certain aspects to the Jews of then by being born and raised in a country that isn't our own. The Jews are Jews, and the Egyptians were the Egyptians, and the Egyptians did a very good job at letting them know that we're not Egyptians, we're separate and different. They say that one of the merits of how the Jews were able to be brought out, because they needed merits of their own, some of those merits were the three things that the Jews did in Egypt to make sure they didn't lose their identity. Now, obviously, you're not going to lose your identity while you're being oppressed. You know, when the nation is singling you out, then you can't run from the identity that you have. But the things that the Jews did in Egypt to maintain their own identity, one was that they maintained their language. They continued to speak in Lashon HaKodesh, the language that they got from their forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, from Israel. They maintained the dress. They dressed like Jews, and they kept their Jewish names. They didn't assimilate and have Egyptian names. They didn't use the Egyptian language, and they didn't dress like Egyptians either. And they say that because of those merits, they were worthwhile to be redeemed. So remember those things. And then after 209 years, Hashem decided to bring the plagues. And the plagues that we all learn about, they took place over the course of a year. It was about 4 weeks or so per plague. There was a warning period of about 3 weeks, and then the plague would ensue for about an entire week, causing havoc on all of Egypt and Paro, causing them severe distress and begging them to Moshe and Aaron to bring away these plagues from Egypt, and then only to revert back and not let the Jews go at all. So these plagues, as we know, were blood, where they hit the Nile River and it all turned into blood. Their drinking water, they say even the water that was in the products of food that they already made, you have water in vegetables, you have water in bread, that began to ooze blood. The only way they can have suitable drinking water was by buying it from the Jews, and the Jews began to become very, very wealthy. The next plague was the plague of the frogs. Where the massive frog came out of the Nile, and every time they hit it, it continued to multiply, and it got into not only their food and their stuff, it got into their bellies. They said intestines. They made these horrific noise, and they said the noise was sometimes even more horrible than the biting of the frogs. Then came lice, and they said that lice was everywhere to the point where you couldn't take a step down in Egypt without having lice under your feet. It sounds like an absolute nightmare. The next one is my personal favorite, is the wild beasts that come out. Wild beasts that come, they say that the animals united from all over the world to descend upon Egypt and absolutely cause destruction, tearing limb from limb anybody. They say that even insects, scorpions, snakes, reptiles, birds of prey, eagles, hawks, vultures just came swooping and attacking all Egyptians. And in fact, they walked through the Jewish area of Goshen. They walked right through and didn't touch or harm a single Jew. The next one was the epidemic, the pestilence, where a disease that caused all of their livestock to die. Now this one was very interesting since it didn't really affect so much the physical life of the Egyptians, but that was their economy. You know, their oxen were considered like cars and our markets, and they were all gone. The only way they can get new ox and new cattle was if they bought it from the Jews. And again, the Jews became very, very, very wealthy. The next one was the boils, the shchin, that dust came and it landed, and anywhere that it touched, it says there were dozens of different types of skin diseases, and the ointment or the cure for one would irritate the other, so that a person can never ever find relief no matter what. All over their body, cracks and skins and pus and boil. It was absolutely horrific. And the next we had hailstones that God put fire and ice together, which are inherent enemies naturally, but that since God runs nature, he just rained it down on Egypt all over, destroying whatever was left from the other plagues. And then whatever crops remained from that, he sent the locust swarms to just devour everything, so that Egypt was absolutely desolate. And when a nation is desolate, what's the worst thing that could happen? To be alone in darkness, and that was what came next. A severe thickening cloud of darkness, that they were absolutely isolated, and they say that the fog was so thick that at certain points they couldn't even move, and that went on for a week. And of course the climax, the very, very final plague, was the plague of the killing of the firstborn. The killing of the firstborn, which was the final straw, which absolutely broke the stubbornness of Paro, and he could not handle it anymore, and he released the Jewish people, had them go out only to chase them and meet their demise by the splitting of the sea. So it's a very interesting thing that we learn. Not even interesting, it's kind of catastrophic, that there were, census, we say, 15 million Jews in Egypt. Now, how do we know that? Because they said there were 3 million Jews standing by Har Sinai, and only 20% of the Jews left Egypt. So when you do the math, 3 million is 20% of 15 million. It means there were 15 million Jews. Between 12 million Jews did not leave Egypt at all. Now, why didn't they leave Egypt? They didn't leave Egypt for, what we can say is that they didn't want to leave. They became extremely wealthy, and they became extremely comfortable, because if you think about it, over the course of that last year, there wasn't really much slavery going on. In fact, it was a complete and total 360. Now, when the Egyptians are suffering all these plagues, there's no time or energy or patience to be able to control a people and make them work. No, in fact, the opposite happened. They were too busy dealing with their own issues at the time, that the Jews were absolutely free from the work. They are actually relaxed and comfortable. And that key word is comfortable and comfort. They become very wealthy because they were selling off their cattle and the water for blood. The Egyptians were giving everything that they had. They were giving them all of their wealth in exchange for survival, mere survival. And in the course of a year, things turned around very, very, very quickly. Said the reason why the Jews wouldn't want to leave was because they liked staying in Egypt. I have a nice house. I got a nice car. I got, my nice ox. I got everything I need. You want me to go out into the desert now? Life just became very, very, very good. And they started to look at themselves as more Egyptians than they were Jews. They started to say, wait, no, this is the place that I belong, and not redemption. And it's a very scary thought if you think about it. 209 years of slavery, and they maintained those three things that made them unique, and they held on to their identity. And for 80% of the Jewish nation was wiped away in the course of a year because they got comfortable. They say that if you want to understand what the future of redemption is going to look like when Mashiach comes in the future, you review and you look at the story and the lessons of when we were enslaved in Egypt. So my questions for you, Maimonides, is as follows. First thing is, what were the three things that the Jews maintained and held on to maintain their identity in the 209 years of slavery? The next question is, that's question number one. Question number two is, what was the percentage of Jews that were left behind, and why were they left behind? And what happened in the course of that year? What is the one-word answer that happened in the course of that year that caused the demise of the percentage of question two? And the fourth question, the final question is, what do you personally see in your own life, knowing that the future redemption of the Jewish people is at hand? Where do you see yourself stand? In which group of Jews? The group of Jews that were left behind, or the Jews that went forward to Israel when the time was right? These four questions are extremely, extremely powerful. And I hope you can get them right, and I hope you can internalize their messages as well. Have an amazing Pesach if we don't see you before then, and hopefully we will. And may God remove this plague from the entire world speedily and soon in our days. Take care, guys.